Welcome to Comical Recovery. I am your host with the most trauma, comedian Jessica Byrne, creator of the upcoming cartoon Bud Ease, winner of multiple East Coast comedy contests, and 35 consecutive years of life experience in the School of Hard Knocks. Subscribe, hit the like button for recognition. Tell all your friends about your new addiction because sharing is caring. We also have a new co-host, Jen, my bestie. So, you want to talk about boundaries now?
The fact that I don't have any?
Sure. That sounds like a great start. I found a book yesterday. It was $30, dude, at Books A Million. If it wasn't $38, I would have gotten it because it was a way better looking book than the book that I have on boundaries, although I am still browsing through that.
What, the book?
Yeah, not the actual act of boundaries. Occasionally I use those things. The Book of Boundaries. Set the limits that will set you free. Melissa Urban. That is not the book that I refer to. The book that I have is Boundaries. When to Say Yes, When to Say No, to Take Control of Your Life by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. It has a ton of biblical references. And then they have storytelling, which is actually the real reason I don't like the book. Because I can't... Yeah, I can't stand scenario storytelling stuff. I don't know why. It's just obnoxious to me. I'm like, give me facts or give me death.
Yeah, I get that.
I don't want to waste my time hearing about John and Cheryl and how they don't know how to communicate or whatever.
You're just trying to get examples, Jessica.
I know. I know they're doing their job and everything. So it says, the book off the shelf says physical boundaries, mental boundaries, emotional boundaries, spiritual boundaries, which I didn't know was the thing. Yeah, right? Having clear boundaries is essential to healthy, balanced lifestyle. A boundary is a personal property line that marks those things for which we are responsible. In other words, boundaries define who we are and who we are not. Boundaries impact all areas of our lives. Physical boundaries help us determine who may touch us and under what circumstances. Well, I don't know about you, but that one was definitely broken right away. No, you got physical boundaries? You got those? Those were good for you?
For the most part.
Good for you. I'm happy that you didn't have the same life experiences.
Yeah, for the most part, I think I'm okay in that aspect.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. We only have other things in common. That's okay. We shouldn't have everything in common anyways. It's not a competition. So then there's mental boundaries. Give us the freedom to have our own thoughts and opinions. Well, that one we definitely didn't get. I know we have that in common.
Yes, that we do. Not there yet.
No?
We're working on these things, but we're not there yet.
I definitely am getting better at the thoughts and opinions. Opinions more than the thoughts. I mean, I've always had my own thoughts, but I used to at least keep my opinions to myself.
Yeah, I do the same.
They did not make for good conversation. In fact, my uncle and he brought up politics because everybody just voted recently. And that conversation ended quickly.
Not to talk politics with anybody.
No, me too. For sure. But that's a definite no-no for me and him. That topic is like always... It always ends in me being lectured for an hour. Let's just put it that way. All right. Emotional boundaries help us to deal with our own emotions and disengage from the harmful, manipulative emotions of others.
Yeah. Like, that one's a tough one.
That's all you have to say on that? Really?
I don't know. There's too much.
Is your anxiety getting high again? Because I feel like it should.
Yes, it is, actually. That's why I'm like a little at a loss for words, you know? The anxiety grows, and then the pit becomes right there in my chest again, and I'm just like, where'd the words go?
Harmful manipulative emotions of others, like my mom? Is that who you're referring to? Or is it the people I've dated or my grandparents. Who are these others? Is there a limit on others?
I don't think there is, because the world is filled with others.
Ugh. Disgusting. It's no wonder I want to isolate.
100%.
Okay, and then here's the good stuff. Spiritual boundaries help us to distinguish God's will from our own and gives us renewed awe for our Creator.
Huh.
I'm sorry. I don't know why your response made me laugh so hard, but
Quite all right. I don't know about that one.
well, you know, I never read the leaf inside this book.
Okay.
So I didn't read that until just now, of course. But being in the program, I know that God's will is a complicated mess. You know, like deciphering God's will from Jessica's will is a very sticky situation.
That is a very sticky situation. And I feel like a lot of people, don't they believe, like, you know, everybody's life is kind of like already like planned or whatever, you know, like there's a reason for all these things because God has it in place.
Well, I definitely agree with there's a reason for the things that we encounter. But I don't think that my fate is destined. I mean, that's where my will comes in, right? Like God's will for me is definitely different than my quote unquote will, but my will is based on what other boundaries have been broken because I get conditioned. My will gets conditioned, you know, as I get to be an adult. And then I feel like God's will is the unveiling of those conditionings, like the revealing of the truth behind those conditions. So, you know, in my opinion with my mom and the boundaries or lack thereof, it would be that it was it was in place and it was meant to be so that I could come into standing up for myself and creating boundaries and understanding narcissism and then helping other people understand narcissism and more importantly, helping other people understand that it's... I'll wait. No, it's fine. I'll wait for her. She's got a lot to say.
There goes the dog.
She's got a lot to say on this topic.
Absolutely. She doesn't want anybody crossing a boundary.
Yes, she's a good boundary holder.
Yes, she is. Nobody better cross the yard boundary.
Don't even look at this yard. Just let her out so she can attack him. I'm just kidding. No, I was thinking about the whole process of being with a narcissistic mom, right? So then there, you know, I also feel that it was important for me because when you grow up with toxic parents, one of the conditions that society puts on you, and it gets kind of convoluted if you are around spiritual Christian-like people, because there's this whole concept of, you know, honor thy mother and father. But if they're bad to you, there is nothing honorable about them. There's not. And part of boundaries and self-care is about, I mean, I think when you grow up with toxic parents, you have this societal conditioning that you are supposed to love them anyways because they, you know, birthed you. And it's not true. You know, my uncle always tells me that he says to people, well, that's great that you grew up in a healthy environment. However, that was not my experience. And it is none of your business to force your ideals on me because my parents weren't healthy.
It's true.
You know, we learn boundaries and then we encourage other people to have their boundaries, even if they're against parents, because, you know, it's not okay to live your life miserable because your parents are constantly so freaking stabby with their words.
Yeah.
On the regular.
Yeah, so, you know, the boundary, I guess, that has to be set is to, you know, limit talking to them, if at all, any, you know?
Yeah, no contact, low contact, or gray rocking is the general consensus.
Yeah.
But we'll save all those things for a different day. And then I like this last little thing because it says here, often Christians focus so much on being loving and unselfish that they forget their own limits and limitations. When confronted with their lack of boundaries, they ask, can I set limits and still be a loving person? What are legitimate boundaries? What if someone is upset or hurt by my boundaries? How do I answer someone who wants my time, love, energy, or money? Aren't boundaries selfish? Why do I feel guilty or afraid when I consider setting boundaries?
I don't know. You got any answers?
I'm pretty sure they're all in this book.
Well, then you better get to reading, because I'm over here like, I like that last bit, but I could relate to that last bit, and I feel like all those questions are the questions that I have because I still suck at setting my own boundaries.
Well, luckily for you, I took this book off the shelf so that we could flip through it more depth, because what I do have is let's go chapter for chapter, shall we?
Okay.
So, when confronted with lack of boundaries, they raise questions, and we already read the questions. So, the first paragraph, though, at the end of this says, misinformation about the Bible's answers to these issues has led to much wrong teachings about boundaries. Not only that, but many clinical psychological symptoms such as depression, anxiety disorders, eating disorders, addictions, impulsive disorders, guilt problems, shame issues, panic disorders, and marital and relational struggles find their root in conflicts with boundaries. I like the meat and potatoes of the information. Then the second chapter is about what does a boundary look like. Invisible property lines and responsibilities. So in the physical world, boundaries are easy to see. Fences, signs, walls, moats with alligators, manicured lawns or hedges are physical boundaries. In their differing appearances, they give the same message. This is where my property begins. The owner of the property is legally responsible for what happens on his or her property. Non-owners are not responsible for the property. Physical boundaries mark a visible property line that someone holds the deed to. You can go to the county courthouse and find out exactly where those boundaries of responsibility are and whom to call if you have business there. In the spiritual world, boundaries are just as real, but often harder to see. The goal of this chapter is to help you define your intangible boundaries and to recognize them as ever-present reality that can increase your love and save your life. In reality, these boundaries define your soul, and they help you to guard it and maintain it. Proverbs 4:23, just in case you're a religious person. And I am not going to go and reference my Bible because that would be too many books out for me at this time. It just would. So it says me and not me. Boundaries define us. They define what is me and what is not me. A boundary shows me where I end and someone else begins, leading me to a sense of ownership. Knowing what I am to own and take responsibility for gives me freedom. If I know where my yard begins and ends, I am free to do with it what I like. Taking responsibility for my life opens up many different options. However, if I do not own my life, my choices and options become very limited. Think how confusing it would be if someone told you to guard this property diligently, because I will hold you responsible for what happens here, and then did not tell you the boundaries of the property, or they did not give you the means with which to protect the property. This would be not only confusing, but potentially dangerous. This is exactly what happens to us emotionally and spiritually, however. God designed a world where we all live within ourselves. That is, we inhabit our own souls, and we are responsible for the things that make up us. The heart knows its own bitterness, and no one shares its joy. Proverbs 14:10. We have to deal with what is in our soul, and boundaries help us to define what that is. If we're not shown the perimeters or taught wrong perimeters, we are in for much pain. So I'm going to stop here because earlier today when you were working and you didn't have a key, I feel like that's actually a really relevant example to not having clear boundaries or not being able to like protect something, so to speak, because here you are, you have this responsibility to clean this house. You've driven there to fulfill your responsibility, and you don't have the key to get in. You don't have the number to reach someone. Everything is super confusing, like they said, It
is, because even, 2 hours later, I still sat there and felt some sort of guilt for like leaving, even though they wasted my time.
Right. And that's a relevant thing about boundaries also, because, it was actually a really good learning experience for you, because you had to set your boundary, even though it was uncomfortable to set it. You would have still been sitting there right now had you not called her and told her what was going on and that you had been waiting for 2 hours.
Yeah.
But that was a physical boundary, because you are taking value of your time and energy to go out and do this job.
Okay. I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm working on my boundaries.
Yes,
I had some.
Yes. Yes. We're in it together. That's what friends are for. You got to have good support too, because it's really difficult to have or even know what boundaries are if you don't have someone else walking that path.
Yeah.
It's a good example for the day.
Yeah, it was definitely annoying to deal with, but good example.
Good stuff for the podcast. Thank you. Thank you for doing the research without even knowing.
I didn't even know.
All right. It says 2 and 4. We are responsible to others and for ourselves. Carry each other's burdens, says Galatians 6:2. And in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. This verse shows our responsibility to one another. I don't know that I like that verse personally, because this is where it gets a little tricky for me, because it gets very confusing. It said in the beginning in the cover, Christians do a lot of self-sacrificing, so the biblical principles can be a little confusing. It's like telling me to be responsible to others before me, but this comes to the idea of got to put the mask on yourself before you can put the mask on your child. If I'm dead, I can't help anybody. And that means emotionally dead, energetically dead, mentally dead.
No, yeah, I get that. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Right, but a lot of times, I don't know about you, but sometimes it's been a journey just to discover what portion of my cup is empty.
Yeah, I get that.
Because I don't always recognize that I am mentally drained or physically drained, and how my physicality can affect my mentality or my emotionality.
Yeah.
That's why I've got some boundaries up with friends right now in my recovery circle, because I just don't have anything to give, because I right now need to give it to me.
No, yeah, I understand that, and you know I know that, because there's times where you can't get me on the phone,
Yeah, well, absolutely, and I understand that, because our friendship is such a healthy, positive thing. Like, we're very supportive to each other and understanding. I don't ever call you and get salty about stuff, because the first thing I think of is all of your life responsibilities that come with being you.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I think of is all of the taxing things that take from you that are out of your control, or that you aren't sure how to get in control over.
Yeah. All those things leave me very drained.
Right, and
sometimes I just don't have the time. I'm like, I don't have the mental capacity to even hold a conversation. Like, how sad is that?
It's not to me, but that's being a good friend, is to understand that there are a lot of takers in your life right now, and it's not my job to be one of those people. It's in fact my job to be understanding and unconditionally loving, because that's what you need more than anything.
Yes, and I appreciate that.
It's
definitely what a real friendship should be like.
It is my pleasure, of course. But, part of this conversation is sharing that with other people, because it took a long time to find you in my life, because you're a non-judgmental person that's always been there. I think you're one of the longest friendships I've had that's like in depth, where we talk on a regular basis. I don't have childhood friends that I talk to that I grew up with and, went to school with, and they're associates to me.
Yeah.
Every once in a blue moon, I'll get a Facebook post that says, You look the same way you did when you were 18. And I'm like, I'll take that as a compliment because I'm not as fat as I was then. Thank you. Take it as a youthful statement and not as a weight statement because I can turn that around in a heartbeat. I mean, I think it's important to be responsible for ourselves and also to cut yourself some slack on the journey to know what that looks like.
Yeah. It's funny because I feel like that's the hardest part, is to actually cut yourself slack when you're going through it, you know?
Oh, for sure, 100%. The journey of self-love is the hardest journey, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we get bombarded with other people's idea of selfishness, and the idea of selfishness from other people is actually twisted into this guilt trip manipulation, because if you're not serving their purpose, then they're going to call you selfish.
Yeah, isn't that sick? They twist it and make you the selfish one. It's like, no, wait. You were the one trying to take my time and this without even caring about how I felt.
Yeah, but that's what serves them. I mean, part of the process of change is figuring out what our negative habits and character traits and stuff actually give us, because we get some kind of reward from everything that we do. Whether it's self-esteem from feeling needed.
Yeah.
Or attention from feeling needy or being the victim. And I'm not thinking of you and me, I'm thinking of the people around us, parent-wise and otherwise.
Yeah, needy people all around.
Yeah, I mean, and I know I can be that way occasionally, but I, try to check myself before I wreck myself.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And that's a crappy process too, because I'm like all of a sudden 5, I'm like, I don't want to be needy right now. I don't want this to be the truth that I'm being selfish and self-centered.
Yeah. It's funny because, that's why earlier today when I was working, I, put myself in that lady's shoes, too. I'm trying not to get mad, dude. Because, she's having a bad day, too.
Yeah, it's interesting because as long as we don't take it out on that other person, it seems like it can be an opportunity to gain camaraderie between the two people that are having a rough day, to gain more understanding. But you have to walk that fine line of not lashing out and letting your emotions dictate your actions.
Yeah, like I told you, I want to be nice, but I don't know if I could fix my face. My face reads something different right now. It wasn't a very understanding face.
No, my face is always a problem. Boundaries help us to distinguish our property so that we can take care of it. That helps us to guard our heart with all diligence. We need to keep things that will nurture us inside our fences and keep things that will harm us outside. Oh, I like that. So it says, in short, boundaries help us keep the good in and the bad out. They guard our treasures, Matthew 7:6, so that people will not steal them. They keep the pearls inside and the pigs outside. Yes, keep the pigs outside. Examples of boundaries. Here we go. Here's the good stuff.
All right.
Boundaries are anything that helps you differentiate you from someone else or shows where you begin and end. Here are some examples of boundaries. Skin. The most basic boundary that defines you is your physical skin. People often use this boundary as a metaphor for saying that their personal boundaries have been violated. He really gets under my skin. Your physical self is the first way you learn that you are separate from others. As an infant, you slowly learn that you are different from your mother or your father who cuddles you or doesn't. Or doesn't. My mom would be like, I cuddled you. I'm like, yeah, for a little while it was convenient and while other people were watching so that you got attention. But let's not go there because that would bring up a trauma.
What's the topic?
Let's just drop that and move on, Jackie. Words. I'm just going to read the first paragraph of each of these. Unless the second paragraph is juicy. In the physical world, a fence or some other kind of structure, usually it defines a boundary. In the spiritual world, fences are invisible. Nevertheless, you can create good protective fences with your words. The most basic boundary setting word is no. No is a confrontational word. The Bible says that we are to confront people with love, or we love, by saying no, that behavior is not okay. I will not participate in that. The word no is also important in setting limits on abuse. Many passages of Scripture urges us to say no to others' sinful treatment of us. Matthew 18:15 through 20, just in case you ever want to reference any of these. Don't want to hold that back. Truth, knowing the truth about God and his property puts limits on you and shows you his boundaries. Realizing the truth of his unchangeable reality helps you to define yourself in relation to him. When he says that you will reap what you sow, Galatians 6:7, for example, you either define yourself in relation to that reality or continue to get injured if you try to go against it. I like that. You define yourself in relation to that reality or you continue to get injured if you try to go against it.
It's not a wrong statement.
Yeah, I mean, in that regard, I kind of understand the word sin in that way of like, it's destructive to my soul, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know how other people define it, but it took me a really long time to wrap my mind around that word and what it really means to me. Because I feel like when I'm doing the wrong thing for my spirit, then I am actually going through my own personal hell, and I continue to do that to myself. Like when I involve myself in a toxic relationship or pick up the phone and talk to my mom or, you know, whatever.
I like that. That makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely struggled, and I had to make sense of that because it was pushing me away from my spirituality, not understanding that because it's thrown around so much. That word is thrown around so much. And then I don't get offended when other people are like, we're all sinners. And I'm like, you don't even know what that word means. But yes, you're right. We all go against our true nature by complying with things that are not meant for us. My grandmother actually always says that the way you differentiate God's will from your will is if it's peace, if you find peace at the end of it, like if you feel peaceful in that decision, that's God's will for you. Yeah, I like that too. So it says geographical differences, but I'm not going to read anything with that because I feel like that, oh, maybe I will, because at that end of the chapter, it says when a relationship is abusive, many times the only way to finally show the other person that your boundaries are real is to create space until they are ready to deal with the problem. The Bible supports the idea of limiting togetherness for the sake of binding evil. Well, that is a loaded verbiage, so we're going to leave that one alone for today.
It was one of those moments where it was like, oh, I wish you could see my face right now.
I know. Well, eventually we'll put our faces on here somehow, but I'm not that tech savvy yet. One step at a time, man. One step at a time.
We'll get there.
Time takes time. Of course it does. What else is it going to take? Speaking of time, that's the next topic. Taking time off from a person or project can be a way of regaining ownership over some out-of-control aspect of your life where boundaries need to be set.
Like, yeah, I get that one.
Yeah. Emotional distance is the next boundary. Emotional distance is a temporary boundary to give your heart the space it needs to be safe. It is never a permanent way of living. People who have been in abusive relationships need to find a safe place to begin to thaw out emotionally. Sometimes in abusive marriages, the abused spouse needs to keep emotional distance until the abusive partner begins to face his or her problems and becomes trustworthy, if that's even possible.
I was about to say, I'm like, please, let's end that, like, with the, you know.
With reality?
Like, I don't think they all can change, you know?
No, if they have a personality disorder, they cannot. And I am a firm believer in that. And if anyone out there listening disagrees with me, then I suggest you go talk to a psychiatrist about said opportunity, and perhaps they will have a different opinion, which I would trust because they are obviously well-versed, but I would definitely make sure they have a background in personality disorders. And don't actually have a personality disorder themselves, because that's a thing that can happen too. The second paragraph starts with, you should not continue to set yourself up for hurt and disappointment. If you've been in an abusive relationship, you should wait until it's safe and until real patterns of change have been demonstrated before you go back. If you go back at all, I'm adding that sentence.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, because I don't condone that, but I definitely agree with the fact that, some people can change, there's drug and alcohol problems or whatever else, spiritual problems.
100%. Like, if a person is really willing to put in the work and change themselves and, do all those things, then like, okay, yeah, I'll stick by you. I'll be by your side. I'll stick around. I'll wait. But like, if you're not making any changes and you're not making any progression on yourself as a human, and like, you don't even see that you need to like change yourself or progress, like, there's a problem.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And the other thing is you have to watch out for what I've heard referred to as magical epiphanies, where someone changes for a short period of time and then goes back to their bad habits.
Oh yeah, that's always lovely.
Yeah, it's a real thing that happens, and that's what you really have to be careful for, because many times in abusive relationships, that's what you're encountering is someone who is changing temporarily for, a month, let's say, and then they revert right back to their bad behavior.
Yeah.
That's how they say in domestic violence situations, the woman goes back 7 times, and that's what happens is this person temporarily changes and then they go right back to their bad behavior and the abuse starts again, and they're like, what happened? Why can't they stay in that like love bombing period? Because that's not real. Because that's the act right there. And then the next one says other people. You need to depend on other people to help you set and keep boundaries. People subject to another person's addiction, control, or abuse are finding that after years and years of loving too much, they can find the ability to create boundaries only through a support group. And I was thinking that that's what this chapter meant, is that you need to have a really good support group. It's super duper important. Even if it only starts with one person that you trust, it's like the most important thing when you're making changes in your life, to have people that are already in that system of change, whether it's like healthy eating or boundaries or whatever it is. Creating a support network is key to that behavior lasting.
Yeah, I feel like, somebody has to kind of pull you out of your own head,
Yeah, it's a fine line between pulling you out of your own head and for sure not shaming you. So that's why I say it might just only start with one person at first.
Yeah.
But to find one person and hold on to them till you find a group is definitely the way to go, because you need somebody who's unbiased. Sometimes you just need somebody to listen while you dump your garbage and what's going on. I know that we've talked many a time where it's like you feel like no one's on your side and they're all on the side of these people that are doing harmful things. That is not the type of boundary people that you need.
Yeah, no.
All right, and so the last thing it says is consequences, and then we're only in the 2nd chapter. We might have to do more on this, I don't know about later or what, but oh God, now that guy's drilling away on his stupid sawzall or whatever. Right when I'm trying to talk about consequences, sir. What are you building today?
A third house.
A 3rd house. A mother-in-law suite. Stop it. Consequences. Trespassing. Oh, you mother of everything holy.
I'm just cutting things because I don't want to be around my wife. I don't even need this wood.
I have 15 tables I built this year. I'm giving them away at Christmas for gifts. Okay. Let's try this one more time. I'm going to try to do it quick. I'm going to stumble all over my words. Trespassing on other people's property carries consequences. Consequences is the topic. No trespassing signs usually carry a threat of prosecution if someone steps over the boundaries. The Bible teaches this principle over and over, saying that if we walk one way, this will happen, and if we walk another way, something else will happen. And I have to say that Proverbs and whatever else, there's like 2 chapters or whatever in the Bible that have like really good examples of what to look out for people that are manipulative and selfish and harmful and all that good stuff. So the book does have some really good stuff in it, just saying, for those of you that dang it, they still have more freaking boundaries. We got feelings, beliefs, and attitudes, behaviors. Goodness sake, I thought we were done. Choices, values.
Like, maybe this is why we haven't successfully mastered boundaries, because there is a million types of boundaries.
Yes, we're not. Choices, values, limits. Let's see, talents have boundaries. Gee, thoughts, okay. Desires, love. Goodness sake. Okay, then that's it. Well, you know what, Jen? We have like almost 45 straight minutes of half of this chapter. So, we will have to pick up again. I'm guessing it looks like we could make a whole freaking month of boundaries if we wanted to. So maybe we should consider that.
Okay.
All right, cool. Then we'll learn boundaries together. It sounds like a fun time.
Yes, it's actually well needed.
Awesome. Well, then we will pick up this topic next time. Yeah, we can pick it up next time. Why not? We'll do boundaries until boundaries are finished. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So all the others.
We're setting the boundary.
Yeah, we're setting boundaries. The boundary is we're learning boundaries before we move on to any other topics.
Well, I need it, so I'm ready.
Yes, I love that. I love it because last time when I was like, you want to do another episode? And you're like, what's the topic? And I'm like, boundaries. You're like, no.
But it was only a no because I knew that it was going to be so much.
Well, fair enough, because actually you were setting a very good boundary. Okay, well, we will end this one for now, and we will see you guys on the next part of boundaries. How about that stuff?
I'm over here like, until next time.
Until next time. Meet us again. Same time, probably, or possibly, because my schedule's off. And same topic.
See you next time, unless ADD brain is at it again.
Oh, dun dun dun. It definitely will be. Okay. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Comical Recovery. Recovery comes in layers, and laughter is the best medicine. I am your wellness coach, yogi, and comedian here to tickle your funny bone all the way to recovery. So if you're like old me, don't keep everything inside your head like a destructive, swirling tornado wreaking havoc into your future. Let's vomit it out together in one big, beautiful trauma-bonded relationship of healing, sharing our experience, strength, and hope. Thank you for listening, sharing, subscribing, and passing me around like your favorite doobie. See you next time for more Comical Recovery with your friend and host, comedian Jessica Byrne.